The race to the heart of America. The C&O Canal versus the B&O Railroad. The early United States had finally gained its independence from British rule. The young nation was ready to grow and had the resources to thrive, but needed a different kind of revolution. A transportation revolution. One that would help the country become the most powerful in the world. As settlers moved west, the primary methods of transportation were becoming limited. The roads in colonial America were very primitive. They were slippery and muddy in the spring, and in the winter, iced over or covered in snow. Using federal funds, the National Road was built to be more effective and durable. It reached Wheeling, Virginia by 1818. It was used by thousands, but still, hauling cargo over land was expensive and inefficient.
The roads between Washington, D.C. and the Western Territory were just developing.
But a familiar figure would emerge, starting a race that would change America. Nearly a century earlier, in 1748, Lord Fairfax of Virginia hired a young George Washington to survey his western lands. This job took young George along the Potomac into the Ohio Valley. And as he walked through the wilderness, he realized that the river provided the most effective route from port cities on the eastern seaboard to the Ohio River Valley. But the Potomac River was unpredictable, rapid, and had many whirlpools. A major obstacle included a rocky 75-foot drop at Great Falls. A canal of this size and scale had never been constructed in American history. In 1774, Washington introduced a bill into Virginia's legislature to build canals around the Potomac's 5 worst obstacles. Maryland, though, which shared power over the river, rejected the plan. But George Washington did not give up. In 1784, shortly after the Revolutionary War, he resumed his vision of the canal. And now being a national hero, Maryland finally decided to agree to his plan. Building the canal could be a huge step forward economically for the betterment of the young nation.
The idea, formulated by Washington business community members to start this canal, was to have a transportation system that would open up trade between Washington, D.C. and the Western Territories.
A series of locks would need to be built. A boat would be pulled down the river and would navigate around each obstacle by using the skirting locks and canals. The Potomac Company was founded in 1785, and Washington, as its first president, started working on the site every day. Though work was difficult in areas, the canal eventually became considered an engineering marvel. But still, the rough waters of the Potomac took its toll. Often, the boats were broken up and sold along with the cargo. In the 1820s, the rights of the Potomac Company were transferred to the new Chesapeake and Ohio Canal Company, which planned to build a canal that would link the Chesapeake Bay to the Ohio River. Meanwhile, the merchants of Baltimore were getting worried. The C&O Canal was serious competition, and for them, a canal was not possible because of the 800-foot barrier presented by Parr's Ridge, which stood between them and their route to Cumberland. So, inspired by the recent and revolutionary opening of the Stockton and Darlington Railway in England, the merchants of Baltimore decided on an unheard of, untried, and very risky idea. On the historic day of July 4th, 1828, at the corner of Pratt and Amity Streets, a modest party was celebrating as the first cornerstone was laid of the B&O Railroad. And on that same day, 40 miles south, a grand ceremony was held by the Canal Company. The crowd gathered with bands blaring, drinks in hand, and watched while President John Quincy Adams dug the first spadeful of dirt and struck a root on his first try. If the merchants of Baltimore wanted to do something like this, they would have to innovate an entirely different type of transportation. The Tom Thumb, a small coal-powered steam locomotive designed by Peter Cooper, was the first successful American locomotive. and fell on a significant point in which railway technology was on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution. By May of 1830, the B&O Company had completed its first 13 miles of track. In the first year of operation, 80,000 passengers rode the train from Baltimore to Ellicott Mills. Canals have been around for centuries, but there was a problem. Working to build such a canal in this scale and terrain was extremely difficult. Men worked long hours digging in the wet and muddy conditions for very low pay. Furthermore, in the late summer of 1832, a cholera outbreak swept through worker camps near Harper's Ferry, killing dozens of workers. Construction on the canal halted for months. Even from the beginning, both projects planned to use the Maryland bank of the Potomac River, and in some places there was not room for both. Between Point of Rocks and Harper's Ferry, the river cuts through the Catoctin Mountains and other rocky passes. If either project were permitted to use the available space, it might cut off the other. In fact, each hoped to do so. Both companies fought hard for the valuable land, and it would not be decided who won until 4 years later, where the canal was favored by the court. In January 1834, rumors began spreading along the canal of downsizing and work crews being dismissed without pay. On January 16th, groups of workers from Ireland began fighting near Williamsport, Maryland, each hoping to drive the other away and retain whatever jobs remained for their fellows. By 1835, it was now a competition between mule and machine. Railroad technology was radically different from when the B&O started, and its new and powerful machines were easily the envy of the canal. After years of both companies overcoming obstacles and innovating the frontier of transportation technology, the issues and misfortunes of the canal took its toll on the project. And despite the loss in court, the railroad company was able to make a mile-long tunnel through the mountains at Harper's Ferry. The B&O accelerated past the likely winner that was the canal. Although the story was not yet over for the canal, the railroad reached Cumberland 8 years before it did, which because of financial issues was never able to get past Cumberland, and fell about 150 miles short of the Ohio River. Reaching Cumberland, both projects tapped into the expanding coal trade, which became the lifeblood of both, especially for the canal in the following years. The canal in that time was able to have a brief period of success, competing with the B&O Railroad over the next few decades. Using their relationship with the Pennsylvania Steel Company, the railroad rapidly expanded into the west, eventually becoming over 5,000 miles long, and would help link together the Industrial Revolution. Soon, the railroad provided jobs to millions of Americans. In May of 1889, a massive storm destroyed infrastructure all along the Potomac, costing thousands to repair. Much of the canal was completely destroyed, and the true power of the storm was shown as it completely wiped the town of Johnstown off the map, and it marked a significant point in the complete downfall of the canal. Today, the canal serves an important purpose: recreation. Thousands of hikers, bikers, and fishermen use the canal towpath each year, traversing the 185 miles of trail that is maintained by the National Park Service. The B&O Railroad continued to work until 1987, when it dissolved with a merge with another company. And even though George Washington's dream of the canal was never fully realized, his ideas of effective transportation changed America's history forever.